All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Very glad to see you all. It's 7:02 p.m. and I'm calling this meeting of the Wakefield Youth Council to order. Ooh, I lost my agenda. Okay. So we're going to take attendance. So if you could just unmute and say here. I know some people are still getting in, so I'll write it down as we go. Yana?
Here.
Ali?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Nick?
Here.
Paige? Not seeing.
Here.
All right. Sophie? Josh? Not here. Nivea? Ellie? I know Jenna's gonna be late. Nick W.
Here.
Tegan? Not here. Madeline?
Here.
Charlotte?
She texted me she won't be able to make it tonight.
Okay, thank you. Paige Arkansas is here. Matt? Not here. Bella?
Here.
Juliana? Here. Megan? Here. And Marie?
Here.
All right, awesome. Catherine, do you maybe want to send out a remind text, just reminding people of the meeting? We have a quorum, so you don't have to, but just to.
Yeah, I'll do that right now. Normally I do, and I forgot to.
No worries. All right, next up is public comment. If there's anybody here from the public wishing to speak, you can either unmute or raise your hand if you wish to do so. I'm not seeing anybody. And we didn't get the minutes for our last meeting on March 1st. So we'll approve those at our next meeting once those are finished. Is there anybody that would like to be the clerk to take the minutes for this meeting? Ideally, somebody that hasn't done it yet. But if you have done it, you want to do it again, that's totally fine.
I can do it. Can you just send me the template, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bella. Just gonna write that down. All right, awesome. So we're moving pretty quickly. Next up, we have our presentation from Mr. Chines. He's a Wakefield Town Councilor, and he's gonna talk to us a little bit about what the Town Council does and his role. So do you need screen sharing privilege?
No, I don't have a presentation prepared. I'm just going to talk, but, please also, if you have any questions as I go through, please stop and interrupt me. Happy to kind of make this more of a conversation than anything else. So what I thought I would do was just share a little bit about sort of what the role of the town council is in terms of like what we do as part of Wakefield's town government, and then maybe tell you a little bit about some of the things that that we're doing right now. But as I said, if you have any questions or if there are any particular things that you want to talk through or discuss, happy to do that as well. So in terms of sort of what the town council is, what do we do? The key thing to remember is that we're the executive branch of Wakefield's town government. So if you'll remember from your social studies classes, the federal government has 3 branches of government. The executive is the president, legislative is Congress, and then the judicial is the court system. In Wakefield, we're actually the executive branch, and I start with that because that's a very big difference between a town like Wakefield that has a town council and a community like Melrose, which is a city that has a city form of government. There's actually those are actually different things in Massachusetts. So in Wakefield, as a town, the town council is the executive branch of the town. And the legislative branch is actually town meeting, which is an open town meeting that any registered voter in Wakefield, anyone who's over 18, can participate in. And I know that includes some of the folks on the meeting here today. So as you look ahead to May, just remember that that's something you're actually able to participate in and vote in as well. In a city form of government like Melrose, there's a mayor who's the executive authority in a city. And then there's a city council that actually is the executive branch. So whereas in Wakefield, if we have a bylaw change or if we're approving the town budget, that has to be approved by town meeting as the legislative branch of our government. In a city like Melrose, the city council, which is the legislative branch, approves bylaw changes and budgets and things like that. So given that, what is it that we actually do as the executive branch? Well, there are really sort of 4 areas of responsibility that we have that kind of speak to the authority that we have under the Wakefield Charter. And the first is the authority to make appointments. And that includes making appointments to different volunteer boards and committees in Wakefield, including the Youth Council. You guys were all appointed by us. That also includes some of the full-time employees in town, and probably the most important appointment we make is the appointment of a town administrator. So the Wakefield Town Council, we are the executive branch of government, but we're 7 volunteers who don't work for the town full-time. We don't get paid. This is kind of something we all do on the side. And so really to manage the town on a day-to-day basis, we hire a town administrator who really is the chief executive for all of the ins and outs of what happens in town during the day, hiring our police chief and our fire chief and, our health director, making sure that we've got, systems in place to make sure that, those employees get paid, making sure that we've got a system in place to manage, town buildings and assure that, when it snows, the streets get plowed. So that's a key individual that we appoint who, again, handles a lot of the day-to-day sort of ins and outs of managing just the operations of the town. And then as the town council and as the entity that appoints the town administrator, we provide him or her with basically guidance around what we expect them to do and kind of oversight for their work. So that's one piece, the appointment piece. The second thing that we do is licensing. So any restaurant in town, any liquor store, and a variety of other businesses all require a license that says, okay, you can operate in Wakefield because you're in compliance with all of our rules and regulations related to how you do business. And, a lot of those kind of make intuitive sense. Like, it's a good thing that, restaurants have to get permits and, they have to get approval through the Board of Health. So they're meeting all of the regulations that we do. Liquor license is another good example, but we actually also license a number of areas that probably seem a little bit more unusual. That includes car dealerships. That's a heavily regulated area. And so every car dealership in Wakefield, if they sell newer used cars, has to get a license every year. That includes restaurants that have any entertainment device, which actually includes televisions and things like that. And it also includes a couple of other professions that you wouldn't think of, including fortune tellers. So we have, every year when we do our annual licenses, there are actually a couple of businesses in town that do like tarot card readings and things like that. And they technically need to be licensed under Wakefield's bylaws, and we're the licensing authority for that. So that's kind of a fun meeting that we have when we go through the fortune teller licenses. So that's the second area of authority we have. The third area is really focused around policy setting. And that gets kind of expressed in a couple of different ways. It does get expressed in the way that we set priorities for the town administrator and different departments in town to implement. That also gets defined in the work that we do to put together a budget proposal that goes to town meeting for approval. And so before the budget is voted on at town meeting, again, they have to approve that because that's the legislative branch of our government. We work with the town administrator and the department heads to come up with a budget proposal. And oftentimes that budget proposal will include things that we want to advance as a matter of policy. So a great example of that is the budget that we approved for the health department recently. Greatly expands the services that we offer through the health department, particularly in the area of social services. And coming out of the pandemic and looking at just the burden of behavioral health issues in the community and substance abuse issues, the impact of families that are struggling with poverty or with other sort of social needs. That was something that, you know, we pushed for, and when we hired our health director and started working with him on his vision for the department, that was something that, you know, that we all wanted to see move forward. So that's the third area. And then finally, the fourth area is that we have investigative authority for anything inappropriate that happens within town government. So fortunately, this hasn't come up ever in my 3 years on the council. But, you know, if we had a situation where, you know, you had the head of the DPW, you know, embezzling from the town, that's something that as the town council, it would be on us to investigate that and make sure that there's a corrective action that takes place. So who we are just on the town council, so there are actually 7 of us. We are all elected at large by the town. And the 7 of us serve staggered 3-year terms. So that means each year, 2 or 3 of us are up for re-election. So this year in 2022, there happen to be 3 seats up for election. That includes the seat that I'm in. So I'm running for re-election as part of that. That includes a seat that's currently held by one of my colleagues, Ann Santos, who's not running for re-election. And then that includes a seat that was previously filled by a colleague of mine, Peter May, who passed away, unfortunately, back in October. And we just had a special election in February to elect someone to fill basically the remaining 2 months of that term. So that seat is also up on the ballot in April. And we all run at large, which means when you, again, for those of you who are over 18 and can go vote, when you look at the ballot, you'll see a list of names and it will say vote for no more than 3. And so all of the candidates, in this case, there are 4 running, people will cast votes for them or any write-in candidates. And then whoever the top 3 vote getters are in this election cycle will be elected to 3-year terms. So the terms that we'd be elected for this time are run from 2022 through April of 2025. And then next year, there are 2 other seats on the ballot. And then the year after that, there are 2 other seats as well. So we constantly have, at least 2 of us who are up for election in any year. And then the remaining of us kind of continue on in the midst of our terms. So what are we doing now? What are the things that are an area of focus for us? And I think there are a couple of things that are worth talking about. So one is that because of where we are in the cycle, and because a lot of our responsibility really lies in setting the town budget proposal that then gets approved by town meeting, that's something that we're focusing on right now. So since the beginning of January, every meeting that we've had, we've gone through a different set of budgets in town to look at sort of what's been put together by the department head and the town administrator, to ask questions, to push back in some cases, and ultimately to vote as to whether or not we want to present that budget to town meeting for approval in May. And we're probably about, I would say, sort of roughly halfway through that process. We've got a number of other budgets that we'll go through in the next couple of months before town meeting in May. The one budget that we technically don't approve actually is the school department budget. And the reason for that is because under state law, the school committee actually has sole authority for the school department. We have authority for everything else. And so that budget will be presented to us and we'll ask questions and maybe make some recommendations so that we're coordinated with the school department. But ultimately, when we get to town meeting, the school committee presents that budget for approval to town meeting. And again, it has to be approved in an up or down vote. So that's one thing that we're working on right now. Another thing actually is appointments. Most of our committees have different members of the committees that roll off of the committee in April. And so typically what happens is in January, we put out a call for applications for any seats that are up, including the youth council. Actually, you guys are a little different. You guys are appointed later in the year, but similar process. We'd say, these are the seats that are up on the Human Rights Commission or up on the Zoning Board of Appeals. we'll solicit applicants, and then we'll go through a process of making those appointments over the next couple of months. Some other things that we're working on, one is moving forward the process of developing a master plan. And I know I can't remember who from the Youth Council is the liaison to that. I want to say Paige McGibbon, but I might be wrong. And I apologize if I am, but that's something else that we've been heavily involved in terms of starting to kickstart that process and make sure that we've got a plan to go through that effort. We also have a member of the town council, my colleague Ann Danahy, who serves as our liaison to that process, so that we're kind of kept abreast of what's going on there. Another thing that we're spending a lot of time on now is the federal ARPA legislation. So ARPA stands for American Rescue Plan Act, and this was the legislation that was passed by Congress about a year ago that directed a pretty substantial amount of federal money to states, cities, and towns, both to help with kind of COVID recovery, but also to support infrastructure investments going forward. And so it's kind of a unique opportunity because it's sort of rare in running a town government that you have kind of a pool of money that's kind of put in your lap and you get to think creatively about what you want to do with it. And so we spent some time over the winter. We had a public meeting where we asked residents to come, and we broke out into focus groups to get their thoughts on what they'd like to see. We had a survey that we put out there as well to gather more feedback. And we've started to put together, I'd say, sort of the framework of a plan around how we want to use those funds. And some of the things that we're looking at are, first and foremost, just making sure we can meet some of the costs of combating COVID and the aftermath of, what I hope is the aftermath of COVID. A second priority is helping both our small businesses in town and some of our families that are struggling to recover and kind of get back on their feet. And then a third priority is looking at infrastructure projects and looking at different ways that we can enhance the town really for kind of the future. Maybe some things that are have always been kind of nice to haves that perhaps we haven't been able to fund before. So some of the ideas that we've talked about would be a shoreline path along the North Ave side of Lake Quantapowhat, so folks don't have to walk along a busy street but can enjoy that side of the lake. We've talked about different ways of enhancing some of our parks and some of our recreational areas, improving paths and adding amenities to parks, things like that. That again, kind of don't ever sort of seem to make it to the top of the priority list when we're setting budgets, but potentially have some real value for the town. So that's something else that we're working on. And then finally, another thing that we're involved in, and something that's of personal interest to me, are some of the building projects in town. So we're just about to start breaking ground on renovations to the public safety building, which we as a council have been supportive of and involved in over the last several years. We're also very involved in the school building project, and particularly as we move from a feasibility study phase that we're in right now to hopefully bringing that in front of voters at a future town meeting, in the fall or in the spring. That's something that will play part of the role in kind of making the case to the town for why we want this to move forward, and what the benefits would be. So that's some of what we have on our plate right now. There's a ton more. One of the nice things of being on a group of 7 individuals is that there's no shortage of work to do, as you guys know as well. And so it's great to have a group where we can all focus on different things. An example of that is our chair, Julie Smith Galvin, has a high level of interest and experience in environmental policy. And so one of the things that she's championed as a member of the town council has been getting Wakefield to be certified as a green community, which actually provides a lot of potential benefit and grant money to come back to the town. Another one of my colleagues, Councillor Dombrowski, is really passionate about downtown revitalization. And so He's worked through a project that would bring state and federal money into Wakefield to kind of revitalize the streetscape downtown. And so that's something that he's kind of taken the lead on. So we all have different things that we've kind of championed, and it's a good working group, and it's good to have folks with different levels of experience and perspectives who can kind of share ideas. So with that, I'm going to pause, and again, happy to answer any questions about, again, who we are, what we do, how I got involved, whatever you're interested in.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Anybody? I have a few, but I want other people to talk first. Nobody. All right, I'll talk while you all think. So I will admit my ignorance. I had no idea that the town council did. I know obviously you guys do a lot, but with like the licensing things, I think that's just so interesting. And I feel like that's not like often talked about. And I just think that's really interesting. So thank you for all of your hard work. We're very lucky to have you and your colleagues doing all of this. So I was just wondering if you could go into more detail about the COVID relief. That's kind of what you guys are thinking about, helping families and what that might look like and how maybe we can assist you in that.
Yeah, so first of all, I would say we haven't actually defined out what we want to use those funds for. Again, we have some sort of broad categories that we're looking at. But one of the things that we were talking through, and this was actually on our agenda last night at the end of a really long meeting, so we probably didn't give it as much time as I think we all would have liked to. But one of the things that we are going to be doing over really the next several meetings that we have is to try to start fleshing out sort of what we want to do. And so I would say the first ask I would say is, if you guys have any ideas of projects or improvements that you'd want to see in town, we'd actually love to hear them. I mean, we've gotten some great feedback from the community. Some other ideas that people mentioned, I heard someone talk about a splash pad or kind of a water, like a mini water park for younger kids, which I think, is something that potentially would have a lot of benefit. I neglected to mention sidewalks actually are a pretty big priority for us right now. So coming out of the Vision 2030 project, one of the things that we heard a lot, and actually we heard a lot from a lot of young people about, was sort of the decrepit state of our sidewalks where they exist, and also the fact that they don't exist in a lot of places. And so that's something else that will be, we're thinking about pushing forward, either using some of the ARPA funds or other sources of dollars as well. But I would say that, what we have in place right now is a framework that, still needs to be fleshed out. We have appropriated some of the ARPA money, so we're getting about, or we've received about $8 million in federal funds. Of that 8 million, we've either spent or have allocated about 1.4 million of it. And a lot of that is related to direct COVID relief funds. So for example, buying testing kits that we've used in schools and town departments, buying PPE for town buildings, doing some of the sort of capital work, the kind of infrastructure work that we needed to do to help improve like ventilation in town buildings and in the schools, paying for overtime for firefighters and police officers and other areas when we were really kind of cramped for staff when COVID hit and we had a lot of people out, unfortunately, under quarantine, helping to support that. Making some of the investments in the health department that I talked about earlier. We're looking to use some of the COVID funds to help us kind of build the department up over the next year or so. So that's probably the only thing that's really concrete. I'd say in the other areas, again, we're very much interested in hearing people's suggestions. I think there's no shortage of ideas, but we still need to spend some time really having a discussion within the town council to try to frame out a more specific plan around, when we say we want to spend X million dollars on infrastructure, well, specifically, what does that mean? What do we want to do with that? So that's a very non-specific answer, but it's intentionally non-specific because, we want to be deliberate about how we think about these funds, and we want to be thoughtful about, using the funds in a way that will kind of create dividends for the town going forward and really hopefully help us kind of leave a legacy for, for you guys and for your children, for the future of Wakefield, not just, kind of come up with a plan quickly that, may not achieve those goals over the long term.
Great, thank you. And that kind of segues into my next question. When you're talking about like us and kind of how we're almost like a smaller body of what the town council does. So I'm just wondering, what's something that you've learned that might be able to help us with our work, like in your experiences in either running a campaign or just being on the town council, working with people with similar passions? What's something that you've learned?
Yeah, so a lot, actually. I think the first thing to learn is patience. Government never moves as quickly as you want it to when there's something you're passionate about. And part of that's kind of in the design of government, particularly in a town where, we don't have a mayor, we don't have one person who can say, this is what we're going to do and then make sure it's implemented. You have to work together. And, that takes time. And it also takes a lot of work to engage with people. And so one of the things I would say is, first of all, you guys just have a tremendous way of working together. I'd say I say to a lot of people that this is one of my favorite meetings to attend because, you treat each other so respectfully. The discussions you have are really rich with passion and interest in what you're doing. And, I hear a lot of kind of willingness among you guys to kind of talk about difficult issues, but also work together to figure out how to address that. And I think, particularly in the last couple of years, it's been really hard in every segment of life for people to do that, right? It was different, kind of pre-pandemic when, you would see people in person, you'd see people around town, and we're starting to get back into that. But I think there have been a lot of instances in the last couple of years, and I think, in a lot of issues that you guys have been part of as well, where, kind of that dialogue was missing. And one of the lessons that I've taken from this and, other aspects of my life is, I always recommend, never assume someone's intent, always assume that even if you disagree with them or what they're saying, it's coming from a place that's genuine and honest and heartfelt. And I think that the more we engage in dialogue and the more we talk to each other, I think the more we realize that the things that seem to kind of separate us are actually not as great as they would appear. And I really sincerely hope that that's something that, those of us on the adult side of government in Wakefield can learn from you guys, because again, I think you guys do that exceptionally well. But I also hope that as kind of, we all emerge from the pandemic and have more opportunities to engage in person, that's something that becomes a little bit easier. It's something I've tried to do as a counselor. I will tell you, it is not always easy. I mean, there are times when you're in a meeting, particularly a long meeting, and, someone else is saying something that just, absolutely kills you. And it's, you can't believe that these are the words that are coming out of one of your colleagues' mouths. But I think the biggest lesson is to kind of take a deep breath, listen as much as you can, try to understand what's there, have the offline conversations and do the hard work to figure out where they're coming from and ultimately try to reach a consensus.
Absolutely. Thank you. I hope we all can kind of take that in our own. Any other questions for Mr. Chines? Yeah, Madeline, go ahead.
So you had talked about how you want to hear from other people about ideas that they have for where to put the money. Is that something to bring, those ideas, is that something to email you directly with or talk about at the next town council meetings? Or
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways that you can do that. So one is you can absolutely email me directly. I think you guys all have my email address. It's on the town website if you don't, as is my phone number, but you can certainly reach out to me and any one of the counselors with any suggestions. Another opportunity is to speak at one of our meetings. So similar to the Youth Council, we have public comment at the beginning of one of our meetings. We do ask people to let us know if they're planning on coming, just so that, we can make sure that, we don't accidentally skip over anyone, particularly in this age when everyone's, remote, but that's another great way to make your voice heard. And I would also say if there's interest in kind of the youth council presenting some ideas to the town council about the use of ARPA funds and infrastructure projects, we can certainly talk about, kind of putting you guys on our agenda in a more formal way as we're having these discussions over the next few months. So no wrong door in terms of communication. This is an area where I think the more feedback we get and the more ideas that we get, I think the better off we are.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'm not seeing any, but again, if you have any for him, you can either send it to me and I'll forward it to Mr. Chines. And as he said, his email is on the town website. So thank you so much for always coming to our meetings, being one of our #1 fans. We really appreciate your support and your hard work.
Thank you. And I will tell you, I mean, I'm really fortunate to be kind of our liaison, the town council's liaison to the youth council. I get a lot of satisfaction out of doing that, but I can tell you that the support that you guys have from all of us on the council, I'm not overstepping anything to say that I think we're all so proud of the work that you guys do and so appreciative for the work that you do. Whether it's the cleanups, whether it's some of the policy focused discussions you've had over the last 2 years. And I would say also just the example you said, I can't speak highly enough for the way you all conduct yourselves as a committee and the way you interact with each other. That's something to be really proud of, and I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to support you guys in any way I can.
Thank you so much. All right, moving on. If nobody has anything else, and Mr. Chines kind of touched on this, the Wakefield community cleanup. So I do have an exciting announcement. So we pledged to raise over $1,000 for what we cleaned up at the lake, at Vets, and at the Galvin. And somebody from Wakefield has pledged to donate the money to our fund. So we have officially reached our goal, which is extremely exciting. So thank you all for your hard work. Catherine, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that Marie and Nick and Madeline all kind of gathered together, and we had a plan to execute the fundraising at Galvin, and we're really, I think everyone was touched to hear this person that's associated with this fund for a veteran that was in his family was so impressed with the youth council, decided to donate that money on behalf of the youth council. So and that person's been in touch with David from the veterans office. So Marie has been in touch with David as well. And Marie, do you want to say anything else?
No, I think that was it.
And so the last thing I am going to say about that is I know I've been emailing with Maria about this, and David from the veterans, they're doing their kickoff for the Vietnam veterans roll to Washington on March 29th. So I'm inviting any of you that want to come to be my guest at the dockside, and we'll be able to publicly present them with the kind of the acknowledgement of the receipt of the funds.
Great, thank you. And I'll send out some more details about what that might look like as it gets closer later this week. So very exciting news. Thank you again for all of your hard work, to everybody that was involved. And hopefully we can take the plan that we had. And I know we had maybe talked about doing another community cleanup in the spring, so we could either still donate it to this fund or find another one that we wanted to do. But I think this is a really great way for us to get involved in the community and make a great impact. So awesome. Does anybody have anything they want to add? Not seeing anything. All right. So I'll keep you all updated with that. Again, it's super exciting. All right, Ali, I'm going to hand it over to you for a communications outreach subcommittee update.
All right, thank you, Lauren. So I have a few updates tonight. So we weren't able to hold our last meeting due to a quorum. We weren't able to meet quorum, but still things are still moving forward. So our voter registration initiative is moving forward. So hopefully we'll get some stuff posted on social media and in the high school's morning announcements soon. And we're going to, so I contacted Wakefield Youth Action Team about getting in their bathroom buzz and news flush, promoting the youth council and social media. That's very good. And another thing that I'd like to talk about is our work with the recreation department. We talked about a couple of meetings ago with Jen McGrath about potentially doing a focus group with Galvin students who use the parks and fields, and like talking with them and seeing what they would like. And so I know Nick is our liaison to the recreation department, so I'd like to do something with that, like a focus group, like that we can talk with Galvin students that would like to participate in this, and we can talk about this later, like to talk about like logistics and other stuff like along those lines. But those are my updates.
So Ollie, what are going to be our next steps with that? Because just a reminder to everyone that the focus group is really to understand that Dan says that there is an issue with the Galvin fields and the courts having trash on them and people riding bikes on the fields and things like that. So the idea of the focus group, I believe, Ollie, is to understand what kind of messaging or what things would help the community take better care of them and help youth take better care of them. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what should be our next steps?
So I think our next step should be working with Nick and Dan to see how we can get this focus group set up, how we can like promote it, like to get the youth involved in it, getting the actual focus group set up, and potentially having some facilitators, like two older high schoolers, to like facilitate the meeting, like people that are trustworthy, like the people that they can talk to. So those would be our next steps.
Okay, so next steps are, okay, so Nick, are you able to turn on your screen? All right. Do you think you could reach out to Mr. McGrath to see if there is a just that we could set up a meeting to talk with him about the focus group? It can be a short meeting with just a few of you.
Yeah, I could probably do that. He normally just says to swing by his office after school because it's right across the street from the Galvin, so I can talk to him about that.
That'd be great, because maybe he can give you a couple dates that we could meet with him next week, dates and time.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And then for, would anyone be interested in facilitating a youth focus group? Any high schoolers?
I'm more than happy to, but I also want to give other people an opportunity to do so.
Does anyone know what a focus group is? Yeah, I'm seeing nods of heads. It's just a reminder. It's a you can add, it's a group of young people, and then you're asking them a series of questions that you kind of helped come up with, maybe with Mr. McGrath. So it's actually kind of fun. And then one of you will be a note taker as well. So because the spring season is coming up, so we do want to take action on that. So so Madeline?
Is this for Galvin and high school or just high school?
This would be Galvin students participating, I think. So we were looking for high schoolers to facilitate, since it might be a little awkward to be doing it for your own age group.
I can help with that too.
Okay, that was you, Yana? Okay.
Yeah.
Great,
Yes, and I would also volunteer as a note taker for that.
great.
Awesome. So just to recap, so Nick, why don't you email either myself or Catherine or the youth council email with some date and time options, And then we can see what works for Yana, Ali, and myself. And then once we solidify a date, we can send it out to the rest of the youth council and then work on promoting that. Does that sound like a plan? Ali, are you good with that?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Catherine, anything else with that? All right, great. All right. Anything else, Ali?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or anything for Ali before we move on? Awesome. And if you think of anything, you can always email him. All right, so next up, we have some liaison updates. So Madeline, I'm going to call on you. I know you have somebody here from the library. So I'm hoping maybe we can do a little quick overview, and then perhaps at one of our meetings in next month or in the following month, we can have kind of a more formal conversation or presentation. So Madeline, go ahead.
Yes, so last meeting, I believe I mentioned that the Friends of the BB Library had reached out about having someone from the youth council update the bulletin board at the library. So I'm still getting some more information on that, and Karen King is here tonight to talk like a little bit more about what's going on with them.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for asking the Friends of BB Library to speak at the meeting. I guess I'll just give a very quick overview. For those of you that don't know, the Friends of BB Library is a separate nonprofit organization, and our only goal is to support the things that are done at the BB Library. In the past 2 years with COVID, the BB, and I'm hoping that all of you have been involved in some way, shape, or form, or been the recipient of the very unusual programming that the BB has done for each of us, whether it be family craft projects where, moms and dads were going down to the library at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon and picking up an entire bag filled with craft projects and going home with their families and doing things. For adults, the amount of online programming using Zoom, but having guest speakers. There was one the other day on archaeological digs in downtown Boston on old buildings and what they found in outhouses and privies, and there was one a couple of weeks ago about wildflowers in New England. So the amount of outreach that has happened because the BB was not opened every day significantly changed the way that they had worked to satisfy the needs of our community. And as happened with every organization, all of it has a price tag that wasn't budgeted because who knew the pandemic was going to hit. So in the past couple of years, we've actually given more and more money to the BB to support those programs. Traditionally, we've always paid for the museum passes. And again, hopefully you've all been able to use those at some point. And do miscellaneous things that come up that the library hadn't budgeted. They will actually reach out to the Friends of BB and say, we'd like to do this, here's why. Is it possible that you can financially support us? So this year, they're hoping to continue the outreach and adult programming. So we've already agreed to give them more funds than normal for the adult programming this year, in addition to covering the museum passes. The Friends of BB Library we only have a membership drive, and our membership is like $25, for an individual, $30 for a family. Some people write out us a check for $100. Some people will write a check for $200 just to support our organization that supports the library. But besides that, the only thing that we have is the annual used book sale, which is traditionally the first weekend in June. And so those are the only two means that we have of finances. And we like to keep in front of the community with the work that we are doing with the BB and for the BB. And one of those is we have this little bulletin board inside the library. And it just came up in a meeting that perhaps there's an art student or someone on the youth council who might like to keep that board decorated, current, looking cool, drawing attention, we would certainly provide flyers with our activities. But quite honestly, if there's any interest, and again, happy, Lauren, to take this at a future meeting, but we do book donation drives. For instance, we have one this Saturday at the Hurd School, where people are going to drive into that rear parking lot, no contact, no waiting. We unload their used books from the back of their car and lug it into our storage facility. So we are doing 6 or 7 of those this year. And then our annual book sale, that's a lot of, a lot of work, and we're always looking for volunteers. So besides the bulletin board, if in fact there's any interest in any members, working with the Friends of BB, we would certainly love to share more details and love the interest and love to entertain any partnership.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. So for the youth council, how do we want to, in regard to the bulletin boards, is anybody on here interested in it? Or do we want to advertise it to high school art students? Does anybody have any ideas of how we could go about this? Yeah, Madeline, go ahead.
I'd definitely be willing to do it, or if we wanted to, like if there's a lot of interest in it, we could do like we do with the minutes, kind of rotate it through different people. But yeah, if no one else wants to do it, then I would be willing to, if people want to.
Great. So maybe Madeline can start us off, and then maybe we could even hold some kind of contest within youth in our community, between like high school and middle school students. And we can kind of figure that out as we go. So Madeline, if you want to start us off, that would be great. So then we can kind of see how it goes and see what kind of direction we want to go in. Does that sound good to everybody? Awesome. And Ollie, maybe this is something that we can promote through our social medias and everything that falls under you.
Yes.
Great. Anything else for Ms. King? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And we'll definitely be in touch about a future meeting where we can kind of get to know more about your work and what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and all the energies that you're spending on the cleanup and everything. Interesting meeting for me as well.
Thank
Well,
you.
I also want to say, Karen, first of all, good to see you.
Yeah, you too, Catherine.
For volunteers, do you go through the high school to post these volunteer opportunities ever? Is that something we can help with?
We haven't gone through the high school. Usually like right now, there's been a call out on the Wakefield community page for volunteers for Saturday's book donation drop off. And we publish like our need for books and or volunteers now right up until the book sale, but we've never pushed it out to the schools. It's usually the item, Facebook, various pages. And any of your families who may be members of the Friends of BB Library, they get a newsletter every other month that talks about our activities and what we're doing. So if there's ideas or different ways that you think high school students could be involved, we'd be super happy to work with you.
That's wonderful. I know sometimes I put out to a National Honor Society or something signups, and I get the slots filled up pretty quickly, and they love, and I always think it's a win-win because then youth get to know. I mean, I just learned so much about the Friends of BB just listening. So I think this is exciting. I'm glad that Madeline made the connection.
Yeah, and we have so much fun working with books. It is not boring. You cannot believe some of the bizarre books that get turned in on these book sales. And we actually opened, believe it or not, because we had about 50,000 books donated last year. We actually flip every single book, and you cannot believe what we find. Old wedding pictures, your report cards, birth certificates, money. And we actually make the effort to search out the people that donated that to return whatever it is. So I think we probably figured out we spent maybe 50 hours after last year's book sale to return items that we had found in books. So, it's not boring work at all. It's actually been great fun and very satisfying.
Wow, that's really interesting. And also going back to the high school and the student part of it, we also, with the bulletin board, we also have the National Art Honor Society. Jan, are you in that?
Yeah.
Okay, and we might also have some other members. So hopefully we can even connect with that as well.
Yep. You can just let me know. Catherine and Madeline both have my contact info, so.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So moving on, does anybody have any other liaison updates? All right, not seeing any. All right, and if you do, I'm going to be in touch again with a few of you to figure out when you can present or when your contact person for your liaison position can present at a future meeting. So just keep an eye out for those, and I'll be continuing to do that. So, all right, Catherine, I was hoping maybe you could give a COVID update. We've had some mask guidance be changing, some changing case numbers. So, and then I would also like to just touch on Zoom versus in-person meetings. I'm going to try to find out what we're able to do now that the guidance is kind of a little bit less strict. And I kind of want to gauge your interest as the council and what would work best. But Catherine, if you'd like to go first, go ahead.
Yeah, as far as the health department goes, yeah, cases continue to really drop down pretty significantly. So what's nice is that we've been able to ease all the mask mandates both in school and public buildings, and hopefully setting tones where if you do feel like wearing a mask, you can. And the thing that we're trying to do now is really just build back those opportunities within schools to get back to normal activities, because we actually hosted a speaker for Parent University last week, and she said that the two biggest things you can do for young people's mental health and even adults' mental health is social interactions, in-person social interactions. So things like the library sale. I spend 3 hours at the library sale every year because I run into so many people. So those are the things that we need back in our lives and that we're going to help promote and make sure happen. And then the other thing for young people is getting fresh air and exercise. So finding opportunities to do that and promote that for young people really helps reduce anxiety and depression.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Catherine? Sorry, I'm not seeing any. So just to touch on what I talked about before. So obviously we've been doing Zoom for a while. It's all we did last year. The only in-person youth council event that we've had was the orientation for this term, which was so fun because I got to see everybody and got to meet Ali, who I'd never met before, even though we'd worked together for about a year. So we could also do, if we're allowed to do so, we could also do a hybrid model. So if people are more comfortable being on Zoom, you could hop on while some of us are in person, because I want everybody to be comfortable. You can wear a mask. You don't have to wear a mask if we meet in person. Maybe once the weather gets nicer, we can also meet outside, which would be really nice. So I'm just wondering what, if we are allowed to meet in person, what people's comfort levels are, but also with availability, what's easiest for everybody. Any thoughts?
So Lauren, I have to check, and I think Mr. Chines jumped off, but because our meetings have to be public, we'd have to meet in a spot that they could be recorded. That's up until a certain time. So I'll check with Sherry on that. But I think having an in-person meeting sometime this spring, maybe in April would be wonderful. That's my personal thought.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I really want to see some of you guys, like especially some of our middle school members. I've never met you in person before, so I think that would be really nice. And hopefully
I
just
have some really embarrassing team building activities I want to do with you guys. Just
love those. Awesome. So would people be, if we were allowed to meet in person, and found a space that we could abide by public meeting law, would people be open to that?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm open to that.
Awesome. Thank you. Great. So it seems like most people are, but if you ever have any concerns about that, please let me know, because I really want everybody to be comfortable. And again, like I said, you're welcome to wear a mask, welcome to not wear a mask. It's a safe space. So great. So Catherine and I will work on that, and we'll let you know kind of what the guidance is with that. All right. Anything else before we adjourn our meeting? It's been a great meeting, very productive, very valuable. All right, I'm not seeing anything.
I did have one other item. I know we talked about election and getting involved, and I think I talked to Betsy Sharon, the town clerk. Although she can't make it to evening meetings, she would love to have someone from the youth council come and tour and learn more about elections in the clerk's office, and then maybe do a report out. So if any of you are love social studies or thinking about majoring in political science, we've got a wonderful expert in our own community with Betsy on civic engagement and voting and things like that. So is anyone interested in learning more about our elections and our town clerk's office?
I'd be interested in that.
Oh, Thomas, perfect. Okay, so I will, I'll reach out to you, Thomas, and we'll set up a time for you to come over and do a tour, and then maybe you can even present in 2 weeks to the town council meeting. I mean, the youth council meeting.
All right, sounds good.
All right, great.
Great, thank you, Thomas. Awesome. And if anybody else is interested, I'm sure we could find a time for some more people to go after Thomas presents to us. Great, and it's a very busy season with town meeting and the elections coming up. And Ali, Madeline, and myself are gonna work on that to promote it within our social media about voter registration and all that good stuff. So definitely keep an eye out and share it if you can. Awesome. Anything else? All right. Just a reminder that our next meeting is going to be on Tuesday, April 5th at 7 p.m. And that will likely be on Zoom because I think doing the in-person meetings will take a little bit more planning, but we'll definitely be in touch about that. So plan on Zoom, and if that changes, I will let you know as soon as possible. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
I motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call the roll. Yana,
Yes.
Ali,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Paige. Not sure about Paige. All right. Josh isn't here. Got a lot of people missing. Jenna,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Madeline,
Yes.
and Marie.
Yes.
Great. So that passes unanimously. So Bella, I'll be in touch with you about the minutes, and I'll be in touch with you all before our next meeting on Tuesday, April 5th at 7 p.m. All right. I'll see you all soon. Thank you for being here. Bye.